It's Monday. Good morning to you. Another edition of Weather Academy. I'm meteorologist Tom DeVecchio. You all know meteorologist Craig Flint. And kind of gray, chilly. It is May 11th, but it's looking more like March 11th. I mean, snowflakes.
Mayuary.
Yes, Mayuary. I mean, snowflakes. Still seeing snowflakes today. And downtown Erie. I mean, even that area. I mean, nothing that will accumulate, but it is a little.
Just the worst weather May could offer up.
It is, but second half of May is looking much better. We'll see the transition on Wednesday, and then by the end of the week, raindrops, but warm raindrops.
Warm. And that kind of ties into what we're going to be talking about today, seasons and the transitional periods and the solar angle and why we have seasons. So winter, spring, summer, and fall.
Yes.
Now there's also, those are astronomical, and then there's also meteorological seasons, which we look at it a little bit differently. I mean, we still follow
We follow the calendar.
calendar.
Yeah, we do.
But there are meteorological seasons, which we'll define for you as well. So let's dive in and talk about why we have seasons, and it all has to do with the tilt of the Earth.
Absolutely. The Earth, as probably most of you know, is not up and down. It's tilted at a 23.5-degree angle. So what does that mean? If the Earth were totally up and down, the Earth would receive pretty much the same amount of sunlight intensity from pole to equator to the North Pole. It doesn't mean that everyone would have the same temperature because there are other things involved here. But because we're on a tilt, that means that some parts of the Earth at certain times of the year get the more direct rays of the sun, and other parts during other parts of the year. Now, this particular map will be more of a summertime map because you see the direct rays of the sun hitting the northern hemisphere.
Not drawn to scale.
Yeah, that's
okay.
But we get the same. But you get the same idea there. And because those sun's rays, we tend to get the more direct rays of the sun. The stronger the rays, the warmer the temps.
Right. So you got to think about the Earth split into two. So you have the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, and that plays a role in the solar angle and where those rays are hitting. Now, there are times where it does kind of equalize almost, and we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. So we're kind of tilted at 23.5 degrees. So think about it this way. In summer, if Tom was the sun, I'd be tilting towards Tom, okay? And in the winter, we'd be tilting away from Tom.
There you go.
So that's kind of how a quick visualization there.
I like that. Good visual.
Let's talk about summer and what happens in summer with the sun's angle.
Sure. And so in the summer, the Earth is tilted more toward the direct rays of the sun. So the sun heats. The reason we get warm in the summer is the sunlight is direct rays. The beam of the sun is more concentrated, where in the wintertime it tends to spread out a little bit more. So that concentrated beam, like a laser, is concentrated light in a small area, so it warms up much more efficiently. Also, during the summertime, we have longer days. Daytime on first day of winter, daylight is roughly 8 hours. First day of summer is about 15.
Right.
So we have almost twice as much daylight, which gives more time to heat the air. And of course, the night times tend to be shorter. And summertime tends to be more humid. As you add more heat, add more humidity. That also tends to keep things a little bit warmer as well.
Yeah, and we do have an example coming up of direct rays of light, a little experiment I did last night.
Good deal.
Yeah, so we talk about the summer season. Obviously, opposite of that would be the winter season, and then there are the kind of in-betweeners, which are the spring and fall season. But let's talk about winter first. So in winter, the sun's direct rays are in the southern hemisphere. So where we live, we get what's called indirect sunlight. which means we still get some, but in terms of the intensity and the amount of solar energy, the budget that we have goes down in the winter months because the sun's rays are more focused on the southern hemisphere. So opposite of summer, in the winter, shorter days and longer nights, which ties into why we get colder in the winter too, because those longer nights gives more time for the surface of the earth and those temperatures to drop because you have such long nights in a process that kind of radiates what little heat that we do get into the surface back into space. So indirect sunlight in the winter months.
Yes, and it's a double whammy, really, because in the winter, not only are the days shorter and the sun is weaker. In the summer, the days are longer and the sun is stronger. So we have, much better chances of those warmer days in the summer and the colder days in the winter.
So then we talked a little bit about the in-betweeners, which is kind of where we find ourselves right now.
Yes.
In terms of the seasons, when we talk about the seasons. So I mentioned how it kind of equalizes a little bit. When Earth isn't tilted towards or away from the sun, you get spring and fall, also known as the vernal equinox and autumnal equinox. So think about this, the word equinox. Look at the beginning of that word.
Equa.
Equal.
Sound like something?
Right?
Equal.
Exactly. So almost, not quite, almost the same length of daylight across the globe during an equinox.
Roughly 12 hours. Those of you who follow it to the letter would notice that it's not exactly 12 hours. Here in Erie, I think it's like 12 hours and 3 minutes or something like that. But yes, but it doesn't mean that the temperatures are all the same across the globe because, just because you get the equal amount of sunlight.
Right. And that temperature contrast is also the impetus for storms to form. So basically during the equinox, the sun's rays are basically over the equator, which is equal, okay? And then in the summer, the sun's rays will move into the northern hemisphere. Now I always transpose these two. Is it Tropic of in the northern hemisphere?
Northern hemisphere is Tropic of Cancer.
Tropic of Cancer. There we go.
And the Tropic of Capricorn in the south.
Right. So in the summer, when the direct rays are over the Tropic of Cancer, that's when our summer season begins. Now I quickly wanted to mention too, by the calendar we have winter, summer, spring, fall. In meteorology, we kind of define seasons a little differently. It's statistics based on the temperature.
Right.
So if we talk about the winter season, meteorological winter actually is December, Jan, and Feb. Okay? And then March, April, and May classify meteorological spring. And then June, July, August, meteorological summer. And then September, October, November is meteorological fall. So it's kind of a little bit different, but that's just because of statistics and the temperature profile for those meteorological seasons.
Yeah, the three warmest months are June, July, August. So that's summer. It's not based on the position of the sun like your astronomical ones that we go in the calendar. And the three coldest months in the winter are December, January, and February. So as Craig mentioned, those are the statistics that we use, simply temperature statistics. And then, by default, more than anything else, the other, the spring and the fall tend to fall in between those times.
And another quick note on the transitional periods, spring and fall. Usually you get weather like that's right outside your window today because the atmosphere is in that transitional phase where it's trying to figure everything out, okay? And you've heard me say it before, I like to use this example. It was taught to me a long time ago and it's something that's just stuck with me. Remember, the atmosphere is a neat freak. It likes to be tidy. The problem is, especially this time of year in those transitional periods, it's not tidy. So it's always trying to clean up its act in those transitional periods of spring and fall, which in turn is why we get weather like that's outside right now and stormy weather because the temperatures are trying to balance themselves out.
Absolutely. Big storms, generally speaking, the bigger the contrast in temperatures, and it's the temperature contrast, not the temperatures themselves. You do need heat and humidity to get storms, so you get a lot of them in the summertime. But when they're the biggest severe weather outbreaks, they tend to be in March, April, and May. Why? As Craig mentioned, the atmosphere is trying to figure it out. He uses the tidy. I use it as, the atmosphere is trying to make everything the same, from the poles to the equator. And in that constant battle, however you look at it, the battle is most pronounced in the spring. So that's why a lot of times our springs tend to be the most severe, because the contrast can be 90 in Miami and 10 degrees in North Dakota. When you get that kind of differences, those are often the
You're going to get a storm somewhere.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will.
And another real quick note I wanted to make too is when we talk about seasons, the Earth tilted on its axis at 23.5 makes a full revolution around the sun every 365 days. Now, every once in a while, I believe it's every 4 years, we have to have a leap year.
Right.
Because technically, and I should know this, but it's escaping me right now. It's the Monday brain. Technically, I think it takes 365.25
And a quarter. Right, and a quarter.
days to make a complete revolution around the sun. So every 4 years, you have to throw in an extra day, or otherwise it throws the entire
Throws a calendar
off.
It does.
And actually, this is going to catch up with us long after we're gone.
We're dead and buried. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not sure of the year, but down the road, there's going to be an extra day in the calendar year by the time if you work out the math.
Right, and they do it. In fact, just to add a little more mathematic intrigue, every change in millennia, and I know this other one, but they're like in the year 2000, you may have recalled, we didn't have
a
a leap year because technically, again, it's like 365.23 or 24. So you don't have to add one every single 4 years. Every 1,000 years, you don't have to add the extra day to help make up for that difference. So for us, the year 3000, doubt we'll be here.
I will not be here.
I don't plan to be here unless there's some incredible. But I think there's also like another time period, like maybe like you were mentioning, maybe in another 800 years they may have to do it. But in the meantime, every 4 years, that's when we had the extra day, and we put it, as you know, at the end of February.
Yep, we have to do that to kind of equalize things out.
Yes.
All right, let's go back to our example of seasons. Tom mentioned the difference between direct rays and indirect rays of sunlight, and this is something, kids, that you can do at home. All you need is a piece of paper, a flashlight, and try to find like a semicircular rock. And what you want to do is put that rock right on the center of a piece of paper and then take a flashlight to it. And you can see what we're talking about here. So I kind of put together this example, ran a little experiment last night here. And basically what you're looking at, that's me holding a flashlight, that yellow thing that you see at the top there, shining it down on a piece of paper with a rock on it. So the rock represents planet Earth, okay? And notice in the summer, direct rays of the sun, that area is much more concentrated, like you were saying, okay? So that's why we obviously get warmer in the summer, because of the direct rays of the sun. Now, in the winter, what do you think happens?
Well, check it out here. Let's go to the next slide. And now, Craig has, as you can see, the light is, at more of a steeper angle, representing the wintertime sun. Now, you can, first of all, you notice the light is not concentrated in one spot. We call it beam spreading. The beam of the light spreads out over a larger area, but the light is still the same intensity. So because it covers a larger area, any one spot will get less energy than if it was directly on it. So the rock Now, the one side of the rock, in this case the southern hemisphere, is getting more of the direct rays of the sun, but the other side is dark, and you can see that long shadow indicating that they are getting much smaller amounts of the sun's intensity. And so you have weaker rays, beams spreading, all making for less energy to heat the Earth.
Yep. And you can see, like you were mentioning, how that light kind of covers more of the area around. So that indirect light is what correlates to the cooler
Let's go back to the first one again, so they can see it one more time. So there's the direct rays right there. Nice tight circle around the rock in the summer. Now when we go to the winter, see how it spreads out more over the paper? Okay, that wider beam spreading means less energy for us.
And that's something that you could do right at home. So maybe not today because it's kind of crummy, but go outside, find yourself a nice circular rock, get a nice white piece of paper, put that rock right in the center and hold a flashlight right above it, and then kind of bring it down to an angle, and you can see exactly what we're talking about, not only in the pictures, but in real life.
Absolutely.
As well. And we're going to leave it there. So remember, we're always looking for weather questions. Weather at WJETTV.com is where you'd want to go to send us your weather questions. And keep in mind, we're always kind of the mantra through this has been inspiration and trying to find something that inspires you to learn more about it.
And there it is, the email address in the bottom of your screen. Now let us know what inspires you and any questions. And Tom and I, we are still soliciting pictures of past storms. Maybe we'll do a little montage perhaps if we have enough. We got a couple pictures from a big 64 snowstorm that perhaps we will show as well.
And a lot of the times, just real quick before we go, you know, we like to kind of review history a little bit, and Tom are doing a great job with that, because what we do in weather is we look back at past storms and look for similar setups to figure out what may happen. So there's something to be said for the history of weather. So I know some of you watching are probably like, well, I don't remember that. That's okay.
We do.
Yeah, but you know, there is a reason for that, because a lot of these storms of recent memory for me, Sandy, is something that is going to be studied in academia for a long time. So there is a reason why we like to look back.
And we do. And the other reason, a lot of the models that we use, and maybe we can make this a future discussion perhaps, of the different types of models that we have, a lot of those are based on what's happened in the past, because we're finding that, you know, a lot of the similarities, especially some of these bigger storms, you know, Sandy, the storm of the century in '93, the tornado outbreaks that we have, they all have similar instances, similar atmospheric tendencies that we can put into a computer model, and they look at that, they'll look at the atmosphere and they'll compare it to the atmosphere, maybe of those big storms, and kind of give you an idea, you know, this could be a repeat, or this may not be as strong. So while, you know, looking back is not just kind of cool and kind of interesting, it actually has real world uses in how we forecast future events by looking at events of the past.
So check it out Friday, more history coming your way.
Exactly. But until then, thank you so much for joining us here on the Weather Academy. For meteorologist Craig Flint, I'm meteorologist Tom DeVecchio. Enjoy your day.
See ya.